Okay, testing. How are we sounding? Can you hear? How's the volume? Could be louder, huh? Is it even on? It's hard for me to tell. It doesn't sound like it's on. Testing, testing. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum.
Could the gentleman in the red kind of flannel shirt listen in that speaker and tell me if you're hearing?
Testing, testing. Are you hearing?
A little bit. A little bit?
Needs to be turned up.
Hello, hello. Oh, it is on. It's just kind of low. Okay, we will try to speak loudly. Can the people in the back hear all right? That's you? Yeah. Okay. So I have a buddy here, Scott Tusa. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we're going to volley some teachings back and forth after we sit, and I'm grateful to have you here today. Thank you. More will come soon, but let's drop in, as we always do at the beginning. Last week I threatened to sit for an hour and talk for a half an hour, but we won't do that tonight. Normally we sit for a half an hour. So allowing the eyes to close or be a little open if that is helpful to stay alert. If the eyes are open, let them gaze at a comfortable angle towards the floor. And then soften the gaze without staring or gazing at anything in particular. It's as if you're looking into the space between you and the floor. It's always nice to take the first couple moments to shift the weight. Make sure you have a seated position that you feel somewhat confident that you can hold relatively still, if not completely still, for a good 20 to 30 minutes. Of course, if you have to move, that's fine, but do so mindfully. Just be aware not to fidget, because when the body is still, then the mind is able to become still. Feel the breath in the body and soften the belly with soft belly breath. And release tension with the exhalation, soothing the body and mind more deeply into meditation with each breath. Feeling your attention, your energy descending down into the belly, grounding your awareness, stabilizing the mind within the body, just coming home to sensations in the body with the breath. Without imposing any technique at first, just allow yourself to align or come home to how you feel right now, in this moment, in your body, as you breathe. And take a moment now to give rise to personal, heartfelt motivation for your practice, for your life. And then recognizing that we practice not only for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others. A natural extension of the practice is this quality of bodhicitta, or the mind of awakening. And now gliding into the main body of practice tonight, that of shamatha, or calm abiding, cultivating quiescence of mind, taking the breath as our object, the in and the outflow of the breath as it enters the body through the nose or mouth, flowing down through the throat, filling the lungs, the rib cage expanding, the belly rising and falling with each breath, the full cycle of breath. Just allow your attention to be tethered to the sensations of the breath as it flows in and out. A soft focus without gripping, without constriction. Feel a quality of spaciousness infuse your clarity and stability from breath to breath to breath. When thoughts, distraction arises, label thought or sensation, just a quick label, and then return to the breath as it flows in and out. And come back to the sensations, the temperature of the breath, the depth, the shallowness of the breath. Just simply being aware of the breath in the body. The Buddha offered some simple phrases to help the mind cultivate presence, concentration, clarity. And I'll offer them here tonight. Especially for those of us who have active minds, it's nice to give the mind something to do. Simple phrase offered by the Buddha: attending to the field of the body, I breathe in. Attending to the field of the body, I breathe out. Field of the body is the tactile sensations from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet. Repeating internally to yourself if it's useful. Attending to the field of the body, I breathe in. Attending to the field of the body, I breathe out. If you'd like to shorten it, feel free. Attending body, breathe in. Attending the body, breathe out. Internally reciting this gatha or phrase of mindfulness. Staying present with the body in the moment. Cultivating the ability to stay with yourself in the moment, and to open into that quality of spaciousness that arises when you can stay. Attending to the field of the body, I breathe in. Attending to the field of the body, I breathe out. Thus one trains. For those who may feel relaxation is needed, another phrase offered by the Buddha, soothing the field of the body, I breathe in. Soothing the field of the body, I breathe out. Feel the meaning of the words wash through you and permeate your being, bringing about the qualities. Soothing the field of the body, I breathe in. Soothing the field of the body, I breathe out. or simply soothing body in, soothing body, breathe out. Feel the breath in the body, the belly soft, the kidneys soft, the tip of the tongue resting against the upper palate, with the root of top front teeth, relaxing the muscles of the face, the jaw, soothing the field of the body. I breathe in, soothing the field of the body. I breathe out. If the mind is dull, lethargic, then brighten it, as if you're turning up the dial of the light, and sit up more straight, take a deep breath, invigorate your awareness. Remember, we do not want to train in dullness, so clarify, bring more light internally, clarity. If the mind is excited, agitated, distracted, on the other hand, then soothe it with the phrases, with the breath, with an enhance or emphasis on the exhalation, release tension. The quality of meditation is in part the ability to check in from time to time. Am I coasting? Am I sleeping? Am I spinning out? And either clarify, brighten the attention if it's dull, or soften and relax if it's too tight. Find the middle path. And now, having laid the foundation of shamatha, or calm abiding with the mindfulness of the breath, we'll shift gears into settling the mind in its natural state, a dzogchen form of shamatha practice. With this phase, we gently open the eyes if they're closed, gazing at a comfortable angle towards the floor. Softening the gaze, relaxing the muscles around the eyes. As if you could see a full 360 degrees around you. And now we shift from the anchor or the object of meditation being the breath. We shift now to being the domain of the mind itself. Settling the mind in its natural state. It's as if the domain of the mind were in the space between us and the floor, and the thoughts that arise and pass appear within this space. It's not like you're seeing with the eyes, it's more of a sense of being aware of the thoughts as they arise, pass, and dissolve within the space of awareness. So shifting the attention to the domain of the mind. The space within which all thoughts, sounds, sensations arise and pass. The breath is still present, but it's not your focus. It fades into the background. And in the foreground is the awareness of the space of the mind. And when you notice a thought or a sensation or a sound arise, just observe its arising and dissolving. And rest in the vantage point of awareness, rather than the vantage point of the thoughts that come and go. Thoughts are like clouds, arising and dissolving within the space or the sky like mind. Immaterial and substantial, appearing yet empty. Feel free to blink from time to time or rest the eyes if this is new. It may take a while for the muscles around the eyes to get used to resting in this way. But over time, it becomes more easeful. And it helps to dissolve the illusion that we abide only behind the eyes, in the body. Dissolving the duality of inner and outer. Allow the eyes to be soft. Gazing into the space between you and the floor or you and the seat. Notice when you're caught in thought. Release with the out-breath and settle back into the awareness of space, the awareness that pervades thought. Settle the mind in its natural state, free of grasping, free of distraction. Just rest. Now allowing your eyes to close, resting the eyes. And just feeling the difference between meditating with the eyes open and the eyes closed. They both have their different benefits. And now we'll conclude our practice today with the dedication of merit, dedicating the positive energy we've cultivated as a community of practitioners, dedicating this, sharing this in prayer, in aspiration. May this practice bear fruit that benefits ourselves and all beings. As I sound the bell, feel those prayers and benefits radiating in all directions. Thank you. So now we'll take a little tea break. If you wish, you can take care of your biology, called a bio break. Get some tea, use the bathroom, stretch your legs, maybe even say hi to a neighbor. Maybe you haven't met your neighbor yet. Welcome back. Welcome back. So, a couple announcements first before we dive into the material. Next week is the last Wednesday of the month, so we do a Feeding Your Demons class. So, if you want to learn that, if you haven't done it, it's a great time to come experience it. What else? I wrote it down. I forgot my glasses. Oh, the Women's Meditation Sangha is now meeting on a weekly basis. It used to be just the last Thursday of every month, but now we felt the need to step it up. We had a lot of requests, and so every Thursday, I think it's 5:30 to 7, 5:30 to 7 is a Women's Meditation Sangha. So ladies, come on out and enjoy the community of like-minded women on the path. It's a wonderful group. And like I need to glue it. I need to glue it to my.
There was some noise when you said what's happening next Wednesday.
Feeding Your Demons is every last Wednesday of the month. I guide the Feeding Your Demons practice, a 5-step meditation practice that helps work with challenging emotions, thoughts, even chronic pain. It's a wonderful meditative technique that has a psychological twist. Is this not working? Pamela's laughing at me.
You gotta hold it.
I don't know. And I wore a lapel. You need a lapel for a lapel mic. That's a bad mic karma. I can't put it on this side or else it's going to be stuck inside. How is that? Is that okay? And I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to give it to Scott in a minute anyway. Any announcements? Volunteer extraordinaires. Jason. Hello.
Many people I know here, many people I don't. My name is Jason. I am the person who manages the center here. Generally, Wednesday is my day off. So, hence, I do join you frequently from home, but not in person.
Huh.
I've been meaning for a long time to start getting in the habit of at least once a month coming to every class, and I'm hoping this is starting that. If anyone has any questions or condemnations, criticisms, ideas that they would like to talk about, come talk to me after, and I'll hang out as long as necessary. I just had a couple announcements. One is the day-long that we had scheduled this coming Sunday with Vinny had to be postponed. So anyone who was interested in that, it won't be happening. Besides that, I mostly just wanted to talk about two things that are flip sides of the same coin.
You want to come up here? You want to come up here?
Oh, I suppose.
Can't see you. I can't
guess
see
I
you.
will fight my urge to.
You have to be invited.
Not the
you want to be invited.
center of attention.
You can be invited.
Thank you.
Please.
The two things I wanted to talk about both connect with Donna. Pamela.
Pamela's
She is
directing.
so directing. Thank
Isn't
you.
it great?
Hi, Mace.
Bossy pants.
Okay. Essentially, Donna is the polyword for generosity. You know, I think anybody who's been coming here knows that. There are two sides to Donna that I wanted to talk about. One is the Donna that actually keeps the lights on, the door open, the rent paid, and that we're able to take care of the teachers with. There's a 2,600-year-old tradition of people supporting the teachers and making it possible for the teachings to be spread. So we have been blessed to, over the last few years, have a number of people step up and generously make it possible for us to refurbish this space and to open and to stay open. And we want to extend the opportunity to practice generosity to everyone who comes in here and ask that folks do what they can to help us keep the doors open and be available for people as they need to come over the years to come. The other side of that is we need volunteers. We have had a number of volunteers lately who've moved on, who've had to leave, and we're kind of shorthanded. And Wednesday in particular, we really need volunteers. So if there's anybody in here who could give up about an hour of their time at the beginning and the end combined once a month, please talk to me. And there's an email on the desk there if you want to volunteer, because our volunteers are kind of getting worn down. And I'm looking at you, Pamela, because I know you're here doing it all the time. Yeah, I know. But you see the same couple of volunteers all the time, and we could really use some new faces and energy in here. So talk to me after, or there's an email on the desk. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Okay. So tonight is kind of it's a special night because we have Scott Tusa here, who's a wonderful Dharma teacher and kind of an oldish friend. We met a few years ago at a retreat with Tulku Sangak Rinpoche in Santa Fe, and we hit it off, and we had a lot of great conversations at that retreat. We kind of like-minded, same generation. How do we make, or not make Dharma, but how do we convey Dharma in a kind of a lively, applicable, for our age kind of way? And so I really enjoyed our connection and our conversations, and so from time to time I've invited him to come and teach with me, and it's a real honor. And you teach at other ATS communities all around the United States, and also you're involved with Tsoknyi Rinpoche, who's a really wonderful, special master of Tibetan Buddhism and Dzogchen. So we have a lot in common, and we kind of speak the same language. We're coming more from a Mahayana, I guess, a little Vajrayana too, but in our teaching I think we focus more, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but focus a little more on the Mahayana, right? Because it's so good. And it's kind of safe. Vajrayana is a little, a little wild, which is fun too. But in this respect, also I wanted to take advantage of having Scott here because for those of you who've been coming regularly, you know we just completed the last slogan of the Lojong slogans that have to do with absolute bodhicitta. Right? So for the last month or 6 weeks, we've been talking about emptiness and interdependence and nature of mind and really vast, kind of high-level, really I shouldn't even say concepts because they're beyond concepts, beyond the mind, beyond duality. These ideas that you can't really express in words or concepts. So we've been playing with that and dialoguing around that, debating around that. And so now, tonight, like if Scott wasn't in town, I would have just kept going into the relative level bodhicitta slogans, which is next, where we start learning Donglen, and we start talking about compassion in terms of relative bodhicitta. So absolute bodhicitta is emptiness, is kind of the true nature or the absolute nature of reality. And then relative level, in this context of bodhicitta, is compassion, on the ground. How does that realization of emptiness and interdependence manifest on the ground with your feet walking the earth as a human being with a beating heart in relationship, and so on. So I thought, what a great opportunity to tease out this juncture of relative and ultimate bodhicitta with you, because I know it's something you're also very well schooled in and practiced in. And so I found this poem or teaching by Atisha, who is the founder of, you could say the founder of Lojong or mind training. He is the great Indian master from the 10th century the 11th century, who brought these Mahayana or great vehicle teachings of Lojong mind training, compassion, both relative and absolute bodhicitta teachings, up into Tibet and taught them. And then they later evolved, and the text that I hand out in the Wednesday night classes is not written by Atisha, but is based on Atisha's teachings, written by a Tibetan named Chekawa Yeshe Dorje, very much influenced by Atisha. And so I found this really cool poem by Atisha that plays with this idea of absolute and relative bodhicitta. So I proposed to Scott that we take turns giving commentary on this 4-stanza poem. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Do you want to say anything before I dive into stanza 1? No?
Do you want to read the whole thing to them, and then we can?
Yeah. Why don't you read the whole thing? I don't have my glasses.
Oh, okay. You have such a nice voice. That's right. Okay, you have to hear my funky voice. I'll try to do my reading.
in a punk band once?
Yeah, I was
Were
in
you a
punk
singer?
band, but that's like screaming. No, I was a drummer.
Don't scream the bar.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
It was the drummer.
Although I wanna, what do you call it? Like growl this. I'm not going to. So, there's not a name to this, correct? It doesn't look like it has a title.
Nameless.
It says Atisha, so it's attributed to Atisha. Who knows in the annals of Tibetan history? So here we go. Child, originally pure nature of mind, is imbued with an overwhelming compassion for all beings. That compassion is born from emptiness, and it is to emptiness that it returns. Child, all things of samsara and nirvana arise from mind in itself, in which no one has ever seen the least cause or condition. On examination, the mind is seen to be like a rainbow in the sky. Know that emptiness and compassion are like the sky and the rainbow. Child, see everything like waves in motion that ruffle the surface of the deep ocean. They arise from the ocean itself and sink back into the ocean. Nobody has ever seen the least demarcation between the moving waves and the depths of the ocean. Likewise, compassion for beings immersed in illusion arises spontaneously out of emptiness. It springs forth from emptiness, and to emptiness it returns. Amen.
Amen.
Sorry, the amen is not.
That's not Buddhist. No.
Making that clear.
Swaha.
Yeah.
Swaha. Okay. Thank you. I love this. I love this poem. I love the use of natural metaphor. Mm-hmm. When I was at the University of California, Santa Barbara, in the Religious Studies department, very fine department, lots of great scholars there, practitioner scholars too. Right when I was heading out, I had just completed my 4 years there, I heard about a woman who was in the graduate department, religious studies graduate department, studying Dzogchen, writing a PhD on Dzogchen and the use of natural metaphor. And I thought, wow, I want to do that. That's a great topic. Because as you can see in this poem, the use of natural metaphor, it cuts through so much conceptuality and it goes right to the heart and conveys something that is something we can get our teeth into, bite our teeth into, and grok on a deep level. So I love the use of natural metaphor in all things, especially in contemplative poetry. So I'm going to give a little commentary. We're going to yo-yo back and forth maybe, 8 minutes or so with each stanza. So you time me. Okay. I have till 32. So this ode, it's like, oh child. It's like he's teaching to a student, right? So, oh child, it's actually oh son. But I told him, we both agreed. In Tibetan, the word bu is often translated as son, but it actually can be translated as child. It can be neuter. So we're taking creative license to make it more inclusive. O child, or child, originally pure nature of mind is imbued with an overwhelming compassion for all beings. That compassion is born from emptiness, and it is to emptiness that it returns. There are many levels that we could give commentary tonight, and I think we're going to stay, relatively foundational level, but it might get kind of deep from time to time. This first line is super deep, but what I want to say about it is that what it is describing is that which I've been trying to point you towards in the meditations over the last few weeks, especially when we open the eyes and we rest in the vantage point of awareness rather than the vantage point of thought. Yeah, are you guys starting to get on to that a little bit? It's really a nice quality to cultivate and an experience to have in a direct way through meditation. What this is pointing at is this very thing that we're tasting in meditation. Originally pure, in Tibetan the word is kadak. Ka is the first letter of the alphabet, both in Sanskrit and in Tibetan. And the syllable itself means the origin, the first sound, the primordial sound. And then dak in Tibetan means pure. So that which is primordially pure, pure from the beginning, has never been sullied, stained, primordially pure. And what that is, that's a classic Dharma term that qualifies or describes our own Buddha nature, you could say, or nature of mind. Here, it's nature of mind, which is a synonym for Buddha nature. It's not just any old mind. It's not the dualistic thinking, discursive mind. It's semni, which is mind itself, or sometimes called semgi rangshin in Tibetan. So here we have nature of mind, so it's probably the semgi rangshin, or the nature of mind. And he's describing our primordially pure nature of mind. He's saying it is imbued with an overwhelming compassion for all beings. So it's not just an empty space. It's not just kind of a dull, or not dull, but like neutral experience when you drop into nature of mind and you experience it. It's actually imbued with an overwhelming compassion, not just a normal compassion, but something that's so powerful that it's overwhelming. An experience of overwhelming compassion for all beings. Because why? Because when we drop into that, when we taste it, when we open into our true nature, we experience the nature of reality. What is the nature of reality? Interdependence. We are all interdependent. Meaning, my liberation is tied up in your liberation. Your suffering is tied up in my suffering. We have the perception that we are all separate, but on an ultimate or absolute level, we are all interconnected. And it's due to that reality or that deeper truth that compassion naturally wells forth when we see the suffering that is all around us, when we grok that this play of samsara is blissful and terrifying. It's the divine play. Yeah? It's all of it. And so, based upon that, we have this overwhelming feeling of compassion for all beings. The next line, that compassion is born from emptiness, and it is to emptiness that it returns. So if we think of like emptiness as like the primordial ground, you could say, or the oftentimes, especially in the Mahayana, but also in the latter teachings, it's described as the prajnaparamita. Prajnaparamita is this term that means the perfection of wisdom, and it has the quality. So the perfection of wisdom is this direct experience of emptiness. Why? Because it is perfect as it is. There is nothing else to do. It is complete in the sense that it is primordially pure, kadak, and nothing else needs to be done to it to make it perfect. And prajnaparamita, on the one hand, refers to the direct experience of emptiness, this wisdom that dawns from this direct experience of emptiness. And it also has the quality of giving rise to all phenomenon. It's like the Akashic field, this domain of awareness and experience within which all appearances arise and dissolve. And this absolute nature is, in essence, neutral. It doesn't have a gender because it's beyond duality. But if you were to ascribe a gender to it, you would say it was feminine. Why? Because it has the quality to give birth to all phenomenon. This is the philosophy, this is the teaching here on emptiness. That emptiness is actually pregnant with all phenomenon. And therefore, if you needed to give it a gender, you would say, okay, maybe it's a little more feminine than masculine. But on an absolute level, it's neuter. Okay. So because it has this capacity to give rise to all phenomenon, and it's a direct experience of the interconnectedness of all things. We talked about this with Elizabeth Mattis Namgyal, who came. She talked extensively on interdependence, tendril, pratitya samutpada. Remember? Some of you were here. How many people were here with Elizabeth? Very wonderful talk. And what comes from this experience of interdependence is a natural expression, is naturally expressed as compassion, because we recognize that we are all interconnected. And so likewise, as compassion is born from this experience of interconnectedness and emptiness, it naturally then returns when it manifests, and then it dissolves back into this ground of being, this womb of totality, this fabric of empty awareness. So, how's that for an 8-minute commentary to something that could take a lot longer? Now it's your turn.
Sure. It was, by the way, Chandra sort of, what's the word? Put this in my lap only a few hours ago. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to read her photo of this on BART and see what happens. It's like a literal photo. She texted me, right? So I had to like zoom in like this, and then on BART like that.
But you said yes.
Yeah, I did say yes, because I'm gullible. So reading on BART. By the way, BART is amazing. I have a newfound joy and love for BART because I'm now living in Brooklyn, New York, and BART kicks the ass of the subways in New York. Not in its multiplicity of places you can go, but just in its comfort. And I'm attached to my comfort. So reading this text, as Chandra already pointed out, it's pretty deep, and there's a lot here. Like actually, what's kind of deceiving about some things like this is like, I wouldn't call myself this, but like a proper Mahayana teacher could really expound on this for a long time because there's a lot to pull out from it. It's very beautiful too in the way Atisha kind of put this together. So this next verse, I'll read the whole verse and then I'll kind of say some things around it. O child, all things of samsara and nirvana arise from mind in itself, in which no one has ever seen the least cause or condition. On examination, the mind is seen to be like a rainbow in the sky. Know that emptiness and compassion are like the sky and the rainbow. So, what struck me first is this first part of it, all things of samsara and nirvana arise from mind in itself. And I think for me mainly as a practitioner, I guess as a Dharma teacher as well, but mainly as a practitioner, I'm constantly coming back to this way in Buddhist teachings we're describing and trying to point out as a meditator what is actually binding us. I was thinking the other day, I'm like, is there anything I don't do in my life seeking happiness or trying to get rid of suffering? And it's this question I have, like from morning till night. I'm literally trying to find something that's not that, yeah? Not where I'm trying to seek happiness or trying to avoid suffering. And watching my mind do this, it's sort of like, when you watch yourself do this and you kind of pay some attention to this, you really start to see where we're fundamentally bound, where our mind itself, when it's in the state that Atisha's labeling as samsara here, binds us, yeah? And so samsara, the Sanskrit word, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, more or less it means to circle, yeah? And so often in some presentations, it would take on the religious beliefs of circling from life to life, so circling from body to body again and again and again and again and again. And so Buddhism doesn't have also attribute a beginning to time, so that's been apparently happening since the beginning of time. And but also samsara, or this circling, can also just mean from moment to moment, right? It can mean from mind state to mind state. And what we're talking about here is a conceptual mind state, from conceptual mind state to conceptual mind state. Basically, Ooh, there's something shiny, grab. Ooh, there's something painful, avert, right? So we have, a way of expressing and sort of understanding in Buddhism all of our emotions and what we label as destructive emotions, those that cause us suffering, those that end up, if we act them out, doing harm to others. But more or less, we could kind of reduce all of them or sum them all up in hope and fear, aspects of trying to get what we want and hoping for that, hoping for something shitty to change, hoping for something good to last, hoping to come into something that is good, comfortable, whatever, right? Like I was really looking forward to a San Francisco burrito in the Mission tonight, hoping that it would fulfill all of my dreams in New York of not being able to find a decent burrito, right? Fearing I would not get a tasty burrito. Fearing when Jason texted me, I don't want burritos, man. We're going to have to do something else. So, but we ended up getting burritos. See, Buddhist prayers really do work. Jason wanted to go somewhere else, but it was closed, and so we got to go to my place. So anyways, I'm wandering, and the clock is ticking. So samsara, this circling or clinging in each moment, and watching my mind throughout the day when I sort of choose to, or have the ability to, it feels like that. It just feels like moving from one moment of identity to another, one moment of fixation to another. And so Atisha very, succinctly is pointing out all things of samsara, not just that state of being bound, but also the state of freedom, which we call nirvana, right? The state of awakening from a Buddhist perspective. Awakening from what? Awakening from suffering, right? The state of awakening is all arising from mind in itself, right? And here, Chandra and I were talking earlier, and we think the translator means mind in itself as its very nature, its primordial nature of what Chandra was talking about in the first verse. So here is where we find phrases in Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism where they talk about the kind of the unity of samsara and nirvana, or this kind of idea that often we hear of samsara as this evil thing that we want to get rid of. But from when we move into some of the later Buddhist teachings, it really talks about this aspect where, based on the mind, based on our own perception, how we view our experience, we can either have nirvana or we can either have samsara, right? And so, of course, if we just magically think that, we might not have a perception of nirvana. There has to be some basis for coming or uncovering our primordial nature. But the primordial nature itself is not a thing. It's not something that we grab. It's not a state. It's not a sense of where we end suffering and we go to some heaven and become a god, right? That's not what nirvana is referring to. So I think this verse is really key out of all of this, because if we look at it and we take responsibility, we start to kind of question, is there something that's a little controversial, but is there something outside of mind that is causing my dissatisfaction, right? And when we ask ourselves that question again and again, and we use that as an inquiry to develop insight, we might not like the answer, because then, that person we dislike or whatever, we have to own up to. It's our responsibility. It's our perception of that situation, right? Now, again, this doesn't make everything relative. There is harm. There is benefit, of course. But at the end of the day, it moves back to responsibility as a practitioner of looking at our mind, looking at how am I going to react to this? How am I going to react to my experience? Am I going to be bound by my perception of this, or am I going to inquire and open up a process of awakening within this, right? So really, I don't see any, I feel like that's our main job as a meditator, a Buddhist meditator. And then out of that, he keeps coming back to this fact that it'll come up, but I'm just going to kind of give a preview. If there's no sense of a fixed ego, what else is there to arise but compassion, right? So somehow we think sometimes of compassion as this thing that's a doing, or like we have to become something, like a more compassionate person. Tisha is a little bit challenging that here, saying, no, from the nature of emptiness itself, which isn't a thing, by the way. It's not a state, right? It's an uncovering. Compassion naturally arises, right? Because we start to see all those around us who aren't experiencing that freedom. They're bound, right? So it's kind of like, this is maybe an extreme example, but what do you feel like if you get out of a burning house and you watch the rest of your roommates burn? What would come up? You know, there's nothing. Of course, intense sadness and fear, but also compassion. Yeah, you don't want them to experience suffering in that, but you yourself are out of it, so you can experience that compassion towards them, right? And then I know is my time up? Yeah, just to talk about the rainbow in the sky. So anyways, so this part on examination, the mind is seen to be like a rainbow in the sky, right? So a lot of the times we use these metaphors, or in Mahayana Buddhism, they use these metaphors of a rainbow sky, these kinds of things. You know, I think rainbow is one of the best examples, because it's one of those things, when we all see it, we all go, oh, it's a rainbow, you know? It's a double rainbow. Do you guys remember that double rainbow YouTube? Yeah, that was like, I literally watched that like 30 times. That guy made me so happy, you know? I think I peed my pants laughing too. So, if you didn't see it, you just, yeah. It's definitely not a millennial thing, definitely like before millennials, but yeah. Or Xennial. Apparently I'm a Xennial.
You're a Xennial?
Have you heard of this?
No.
It's some bullshit thing. Some guy says in between 1980 and 84, there's a sub-generation. Oh. Anyways.
When were you born?
1980, yeah. But I'm technically Gen X, yeah. So anyways, sorry. I'm just sucking the time now. So on examination, the mind is to be seen like a rainbow in the sky. So a rainbow is this kind of amazing thing we get amazed by, but actually, when you can't find anything there. You know, it's dependent on conditions, right? It has to have the light hitting water, apparently, right? If there's any scientists in the room, please tell me if I'm wrong. The light has to hit water in a certain way for this light show to happen with these multicolors, right? And yet if we try to touch it, if we try to grab onto it, if we try to put it in our pocket or take it home, we can't. If you even move a certain direction to the right, left, or whatever, you may lose sight of it as well, because it's also dependent on our perception, right? So here, on examination, the mind is to be seen like a rainbow in the sky. So here, it's a little confusing in this, and I don't want to get too technical, but he's jumping between relative and ultimate. So here he's actually talking about the relative aspect of mind, not its ultimate nature, I think. And then in this last verse, he says, know that emptiness and compassion are like the sky and the rainbow. So emptiness itself is free, it's nothing whatsoever, right? It's like the sky, in the sense, they use sky as a metaphor a lot in Mahayana Buddhism for emptiness. But yet, anything can appear in that sky. If the right conditions come, like water and light, a rainbow can appear in that sky. So similarly, it's saying, when the right conditions come, compassion also appears, just like a rainbow. And in my next round, I want to talk a little bit about that aspect of compassion, but I'll give up the mic.
Nice.
Sorry.
No, great. Awesome. It's nice to create little constraints, because then it makes you do things that you normally wouldn't do. Okay. O child, see everything like waves in motion that ruffle the surface of the deep ocean. They arise from the ocean itself and sink back into the ocean. So bringing this back to experience, this is something that we do in meditation. Awareness is like the ocean. Thoughts are waves that arise and dissolve from within the ocean. They are not the same as the ocean. Waves are not the same as the ocean, but they are not completely different either. Another analogy that's helpful is like the sun and its rays. The sun and its rays are not two different things. and yet they are not the same. And so thoughts, sensations, appearances, they arise from the ocean or the sun of awareness. And then, I don't know if the rays dissolve back in, but definitely the waves dissolve back into that ocean, like awareness. I can't read my notes. Oh my God. No, I basically said what I wrote. And that wouldn't work anyway. I've got a stigmatism on my left eye, so I can't just wear normal glasses. I think so. See everything like waves in motion that ruffle the surface of the deep ocean. So we can, this can be said in terms of, or refer to phenomena, that everything is arising and dissolving within this kind of wave of molecular, this ocean of molecular waves. But also I feel like this is more important to, rather than getting into philosophy and phenomenology, feeling this more in terms of our experience of meditation. You could read a stanza like this and then contemplate it. And that's how these types of poems were meant to be used. You read a stanza or you read the four, and then you contemplate them. Let them settle in and come alive within you through direct experience. So do you experience awareness like vast, like the ocean? And thoughts are like the waves, the ripples on the surface of the ocean. And they arise from that ocean, and then they sink back into the ocean. They are not the same, yet they are not different. This is like a koan that you contemplate and internalize and come to certainty of your own accord. You have a question?
I have a thought.
Okay.
The analogy you talked about the sun and the waves.
Mm-hmm.
So the sun gives rise to conditions that create the light. The light then travels through space and then interacts and becomes the causes of some other conditions. And maybe gets absorbed and then re-emitted, and then becomes, so it's a cycle of connectedness where it goes from cause to condition back to cause again, and connects all things.
Yeah. Yes.
I feel a song coming on.
Yes.
Probably a Beatles song.
Sun is a mass of incandescent gas.
See?
We could do one line, and we could build a song on a theme. Molly.
Well, I'm going to have to use my teacher voice, but I am a science teacher, and I have taught light waves and energy, and what's interesting to me while you were talking was thinking about actually like the physics behind it, of the fact that energy can't be created or destroyed. And so you have this matter that's receiving a vibration, that's moving through it, and that goes wherever, in whatever direction, and affects everything around it. And since it can't be destroyed, there's all kinds of interplay,
Yes.
right down to the atomic level.
Yes. Thank you.
Also, you were right about the rainbow. Refraction.
Do I get a gold star?
But you can have a stamp later.
Thanks. Okay. So just to read the last stanza here. Nobody has ever seen the least demarcation between the moving waves and the depths of the ocean. Likewise, compassion for beings immersed in illusion arises spontaneously out of emptiness. It springs forth from emptiness, and to emptiness it returns. So yeah. So I think the nobody here he's referring to, just to be clear, is like a meditator, any meditators who have searched, right? Yogis and yoginis over time who have looked for that boundary, right? To demarcate between the moving waves and the ocean itself, right? And so, as Chandra is pointing out, as we deepen our practice into shamatha and vipassana, or stabilizing our awareness, and then insight practice, especially in insight practice, we start to see directly. I mean, we're kind of intellectually describing this now, but directly in our meditation, we start to see the waves of the mind as sort of coming out from the ocean, back in. Yet, when we're not looking, when we're not checking, we're bound. They seem so real. They seem so definitive. They seem so personal, right? And so I think, my guess is the majority of us in this room, this is where we're at, Our sort of work to be done is in the verse Chandra just talked on, which is to meditate. If we just think it, like just intellectually, it doesn't really help that much. It kind of sounds cool, maybe. I'm not sure. Depends what your group of friends is. But it doesn't really help that much unless we meditate and we have the experience of thoughts being the waves on the ocean of mind, right? And we start to have this non-duality of experience come out more and more. Because, again, emptiness is not a thing. It's not a state we're trying to produce in Buddhism. It's something we're trying to uncover. Because from a Buddhist perspective, it's the nature of all phenomena. It's the nature of mind. It's the nature of who and what we think we are on an absolute level, right? So it's also not, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but for myself, every one of my habits is sort of against this in a way, in the sense of a habit of duality. It's like forming a habit towards identifying with a thought, forming a habit of identifying with an emotion, and then forming that again and again and again, and it's strengthening that bound, or that way we bind ourselves, yeah? So, I like to reflect on this a lot, is like, when I sit down on the cushion to meditate, why am I here? Like, why am I doing this? Why am I meditating? Because I notice sometimes I sit down and just do it. I don't think, why am I here? And the moment I ask why, sometimes I wanted just some relief, like from some emotional pain or suffering. But when I study the texts, Buddhist texts, then I realized, no, actually, I want to see through illusion. I want to see through this duality of making a demarcation or a boundary or some kind of wall between the states of mind that I experience, the emotions I experience, and the depth of what they are, right? So fundamentally, that's where my Buddhist path really becomes alive. That's where my practice comes alive. Because again, there's no, I think there's no dogma there for me. It's just me and my experience, and trying to take the Buddhist teachings to heart and put them into practice. So, for me, in any kind of spiritual dimension, this is what I personally pray for, that I do not see a demarcation anymore. I cease to see a boundary between the waves of the mind and its depths or its emptiness. So I highly recommend that if you want to be free. So, but of course, don't take my check for yourself. So then it kind of moves on. Likewise, compassion for beings immersed in illusion arises spontaneously out of emptiness. So this is kind of, I already said it earlier. I kind of ruined this verse already, but basically, or the surprise, I've been the surprise. But basically, to me, this brings out one of my teachers, Sognir Rinpoche. I'm about to help. I'm going to teach on a retreat with him in Mount Madonna this next week, and near Santa Cruz. And he often has this way of expressing this, where when there's a lack, when there's no sense of a fixed identity or self, when we're not bound by our states of mind and our emotions, what else could arise? So I already said this, so it's not a nothingness. So I want to be clear here. Whenever we use this term emptiness, it's not talking about a nothingness. It's just talking about uncovering sort of all of the things that bind us to the duality of our experience, which is the cause of suffering from a Buddhist perspective, right? So what happens when the sky-like nature of emptiness shines brightly within our experience? Anything can arise. Rainbows can come. Bums pooping out there can come. Heavy metal can come. New Age music can come. Whatever, right? It can all come. There's nothing that we have to stop. So sometimes it's like when we kind of get into the spiritual path, we want to be so free from our pain that we make this kind of demarcation between spirituality or liberation and suffering. And here it's kind of saying, yes, samsara is definitely beyond suffering. But here, when we unify them, we start to see that emptiness is then not pushing something out. It's just that anything can come within the framework or the sky of that emptiness, including compassion, right? So, and compassion, and then, like I said earlier, there's nothing but compassion that can arise. Like I said, if you leave a burning house, yet everyone else you know is burning in it, yeah, what do we think compassion is? It's not a pleasant feeling, actually. It's a sadness for the suffering of beings, right? For our own suffering we go through. So it's sort of like we would almost say sometimes in Mahayana teachings, compassion and emptiness are like a unity. They're kind of one and the same. It's just you have like the sky, and then what can be reflected in that sky, or the mirror, and what can be reflected in that mirror. So anyways, I think I'm going to stop there. But it's really beautiful to end here. It springs forth from emptiness, and to emptiness it returns. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good. So maybe some questions? Yeah. No, actually I do know what it means a little bit. But it's also, well, the only thing I wanted to point out is emptiness is not a thing. It's not a godlike state. It's not a theistic perspective. It's also not like a soul. So it doesn't mean that, I was thinking about this, if everything can come within emptiness, it returns to emptiness. When we're using language, it sounds very dualistic. It sounds like emptiness is this thing. But it's not. It's more like this space, like in this room, for instance, like the space where there's nothing here. Anything can appear in that, right? If I wave my arm, this can happen, right? So it's like that, but it's in experience. And it's within this state of freedom. So for me, this is kind of something I get really excited about on my path, because it's like, oh, then like it's not about like rejecting everything. It's about how to see through into the nature of something, or see how this is binding me, right? Rather than I have to pick and choose and have so much preference. I think when I first started Buddhist path, I think it increased my preferences. Like I needed the perfect cushion, perfect incense, can't have too many chemicals in it, just the perfect right amount, nice window in front to see out into my forest when I was in retreat, perfect, not too warm of a jacket, but just warm enough. All these conditions we put around us. And so, some of that is useful, but sort of just checking. I think as we become more free and less bound, our preference also decreases a little bit. I don't know, just a theory. So let's stop there. Yeah.
No, I like that. That's great. I like your transparency. He was a monk for many years, so you had a lot of time to get everything right.
Yeah.
When you're
way too much time.
Way too much time, right. Have a kid, and then you'll learn how to get scrappy. Scrappy.
Totally.
Yeah. I just want to say, I appreciate everything you've shared, and I really feel like Atisha is saying our true nature, our essence, who we really are, in our awakened state, not in the encumbered state, is love. And it's ever flowing. It's naturally, all pervasively, always emanating, just like the rays of the sun. And we have lots of funny noises going on tonight. So that when we have the ability and the quietude and the circumstances to drop in and really experience that semni, or that semgi rangjin, the mind in itself, not the mind, which is the dualistic mind, the ni, or mind in itself, Buddha nature, we're overwhelmed with what's there, which is love and compassion. I mean, Jesus said, God is love. The Dalai Lama says, my religion is kindness. The essential nature of our being is love. That's what all of these stanzas, I think, eventually are pointing to, teaching us to see the illusory nature of thoughts as they arise and dissolve back within the oceanic awareness. And that when we drop in, it's that experience of overwhelming compassion. And like I said, in the Lojong slogans, what they say is, if your practice isn't making you a better person, a more compassionate human being, then you've gone astray. You're not either doing the right practices or you're not doing the practices correctly. So essentially, all in a nutshell, wouldn't you say that that's it? That it's all love? I mean, that's oversimplification, but let's not lose sight of that. Yeah. And that emptiness isn't a nihilism. Emptiness actually is a quality of reality of our essential being that naturally emulates or emits the feeling of love, interconnectedness, compassion for all beings, even our enemies. And that's what we're working with, particularly with the relative level slogans that will come next week. That we start with next week. So thank you so much for your commentary. And your playfulness and coming and sharing the space with us. I'm sure people benefited, and we're at time now, so I want to respect your time and not go over. So let's go ahead and just close the practice. Close your eyes for a moment, and let's take a moment to just drop in and acknowledge such a great opportunity we have to contemplate our path and our practice and to be of benefit in the world. And from the heart, feel those rays of light emanating in all directions. Wish that all beings may experience their oceanic and overwhelming heart of compassion. Thank you.